Views of BronxNet program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
The Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Darren Jaime, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our community and around the world. First up, we'll bring you the latest headlines in local, national, and international news. And after that, we'll sit down with the Bronx business owner who's fighting to cure cancer for free. Plus, our political analyst will join us to break down some of the latest stories taking over the news both nationally and internationally. And finally, in our legal corner, we'll continue our Law A to Z series with the letter H. So stay tuned, because all this and much more is heading your way, because right now, we're officially open. And hello, Bronxites. I'm your host, Darren Jaime. Today is Wednesday, March 12th, 2013. And of course, you're watching Open, the only live and interactive program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV set. We encourage you to stay connected to us by tweeting us at BronxNet TV. You can also like us on Facebook by going to Open BronxNet Television. Well, kicking things off in national news in Washington, hours after Representative Paul Ryan announced his 2014 budget plan, Democrats wasted no time of their own unveiling a plan. The two plans differ on a number of critical issues, and a bitter negotiation process is expected. Democrats believe the Ryan plan will destroy programs critical to the middle class, while Republicans believe the taxes increased the taxes increased the Democrats are calling for will call for major setbacks. Of course, we'll keep you updated on that here. On the international front, hundreds of people gathered in St. Peter's Square on Tuesday to find out the results of the ritualistic voting process, which will eventually elect the next pope. 115 Catholic cardinals signaled with black smoke, announcing that their task of selecting a new leader must be postponed at least one more day. The cardinals are said to be split on whether they want a traditionalist or a reformer, and there's no set deadline on the selection. The process will continue until the right person is found. In New York City, the mayor's plan to fight obesity through the ban of sugary drinks larger than 16 ounces has come to a screeching halt after being struck down by a New York State judge. Now, while many groups and individuals say the law is controlling and ineffective, the mayor will continue to fight for the passing of this law in the coming months. He believes it'll spread way beyond New York. And back here on the Bronx, after a number of hearings, rallies, and debates, the Department of Education has approved the closure of 7 public schools as a result of low performance ratings. These schools will begin phasing students out grade by grade, with the ultimate goal of closing them all by the academic year of 2014 to 2015. Well, those are the headlines, and we have to take a break, but coming up, we'll be joined by our political analyst on set to update us on the latest in news and politics. But first, Lehman High School recently held a hearing to speak out against the DOE plans to phase out the school and our cameras. And the DOE means the Department of Education. Our cameras were there, and we now bring you the story.
Well, I don't want to be cynical. I hope people were listening today. I'm not optimistic about people listening. I think this is just a pro forma exercise. I will be pleasantly surprised if they do listen. But believe me, we're going to keep fighting. And I think we made our case, and we're going to continue to make our case. We're not going to stop.
The fight is on to save Lehman High School, the latest in a string of large schools in the Bronx to be phased out by the New York City Department of Education after getting low scores on its annual report card. With reorganization efforts in process under the direction of the Department of Education, many changes are being made. And with the new principal assigned to the school in 2011, some parents say the school is on the rebound and deserves a chance.
So for you to sit here and say that this school is not servicing the community, the numbers don't reflect that, that's quite frankly an insult to me, sir.
Parents Association President Elvin Flores' son is on the school's robotic team that performed for the crowd. He says that this and the work of teachers are not getting enough recognition.
What I don't understand is, last year when Ms. Lobianco took over this school, you came in the middle of the school year and you immediately proposed the same type of phase out. I don't understand. Who hires someone, brings them in, and then tells them within the first couple of months you're not doing a good job? You're basing that on data that's in the past. There'll be data to prove that Lehman is on an upswing.
Principal Rose Lobianco then outlined her strategy to raise student performances that include better communication between teachers and students and upgrading their computers.
Flexible programming in accordance with the academic policy guidelines and offer multiple pathways. PM school, targeted intervention, independent studies, Saturday school.
And she's getting support from New York City Councilman Jimmy Vaca.
And the reason Lehman fell to its feet is because of DOE's own policies and what they did to this building. It's not because of the students or the parents. They forced Lehman into 3 years of crisis and instability, and now they say we're going to close you. It's just not fair, and it's something I don't accept at all.
Others backing the school are recent graduate and current private first class in the U.S. Army, Amado Sanchez.
I just recently came back from active duty orders, and I came here because I heard they were doing this again, and I was like, why? It really bothers me because, not only did I make friends here, this is the place where I started to feel home rather than just being in the streets and doing nothing. I come here and help out, mentor people with whatever I can.
Speaker after speaker made their pitch at the podium in favor of the school. What will happen remains to be seen. The panel for educational policy will be making a vote in March. For BronxNet, this is Arlene Makoko.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
2 outs with a runner on first base. Now the big guy comes off the bat, hitting .342 with 92 RBIs and 36 homers. First pitch is out.
Chill raw and prepared foods promptly. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov. Separate raw meats from other foods by using different cutting boards. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov. Cook foods to the right temperature using a food thermometer. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
I'm lucky. Let me help you with that. I get to do something I love. It has nothing to do with touchdowns or titles. Everybody bring it in. I get to play a part in the life of someone just starting out. How many of you think homework is just as important as teamwork? I help keep kids in school. Good. And that's the name of the game. My name is LaDainian Thomason. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United.
And you're back here on Open. Darren Jaime here with you. We now move to local news, and we're pleased to be joined by our political analyst, also professor at SUNY Maritime, Mark Meyritz, and good to have you, Mark.
It's great to be here, Darren.
We talked a little bit in the last section about Mayor Bloomberg and the fact that he took this loss in regards to these sugary drinks. People are saying the mayor's too involved, taking the loss against the sugary drinks. Was this really anticipated by the Bloomberg administration?
It's amazing, though, you know, I have the decision here. It's 37 pages about the 16-ounce gulp drink. Is that amazing? That's incredible. 37 pages of the judge's opinion. I'm still in the middle of reading it. But the bottom line was that Mayor Bloomberg wanted to, according to the judge, really enforce people's preferences in terms of what they eat or drink, and the judge found that this was not an imminent danger of disease. If it's an imminent danger of disease, there's a breakout of some terrible disease, or there's a food poisoning epidemic, then the Board of Health, the judge says, has the power to move in. But here, the connection between the sugary drinks and imminent danger is really not there. It might be a bad thing to drink sugary drinks, but as an imminent danger to the community, the judge said it isn't, and he struck it down.
Do you see this going further in appeals?
Well, I think the mayor said, and the Corporation Council said they're going to appeal. The problem is not only that, it's also that the judge said that the regulation was arbitrary and capricious. Why? Because it has so many loopholes and exceptions. For example, 7-Eleven is exempt from this law. Why? Because they're subject to some special carve-out under the state law. So here you have the restaurant, and an interesting group that's bringing this case, the Korean delis, the National Restaurant Association, the bottlers are all getting together and saying, well, this is very injurious to us, but how come 7-Eleven gets off the hook? That's not fair, the judge says. Not fair to carve out an exception for 7-Eleven and enforce it against these other
but
stores.
Absent these exceptions to the rule, it would still be hard to go forward.
It would be hard to go forward, hard to implement. And also, there's an element when an agency passes a regulation that it has to be reasonable and understandable to the public. Now, if you say you have a ban on 16-ounce drinks, right? Now, theoretically, you can go to the store and buy, I don't know, 5 bottles of Coca-Cola and drink those. Who stops you from doing that? But it's kind of a slippery slope when you start to ban one type of drink, and then you start having government interfering with all the decisions we make, which might be poor decisions, but whether that's a health outbreak, that's what the judge is saying. Department of Health job is not to control legal substances, it's to take food that's contaminated off the market and to stop the spread of dangerous disease. This is not their job. It's social control. If it's social control, the judge says that's for the city council to do because they're elected by the people to make those social decisions. But there's no reason for the Board of Health, the Department of Health, to have that authority. So it's really the mayor trying to be paternalistic. That's what they call the nanny rule. That's what they talk about in the paper today. And so people don't like that in America, and certainly not in New York City. We're very independent. We want to drink, we want to drink, and if we want to drink 16 ounces, fine. And interestingly, all the stores had bought smaller cups, thousands, hundreds and thousands of cups below 16 ounces in anticipation that this rule would go into effect. And now they've got the smaller cups, and the ban has been struck down. So there you go.
Well, we'll see smaller cups all across New York City.
I think you're right. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them.
Let's take the shuttle down to Washington, D.C. for a second.
Mm-hmm.
John Brennan confirmed the confirmation hearings in regards to John Brennan. The Obama administration seems to be having their way with regards to these confirmations. This was something that was anticipated right after the State of the Union address with the addition of bipartisanship. Your thoughts on these confirmation hearings so far?
Well, it's been pretty painful, actually, pretty bumpy with Hagel's nomination. Hagel was up and down. He was on a roller coaster. Eventually, they did approve him. He had a very poor performance in his confirmation hearing. And very candidly, I don't think he's overwhelmed anybody by his trip abroad to Afghanistan or anywhere else, where he really doesn't, I don't think, show the kind of knowledge or depth of information that somebody like Panetta or Gates would have. But on that one, very painful. So here's Obama. He puts his friend Susan Rice up for Secretary of State. That gets slammed down. John Kerry comes in and
didn't get slammed down. She decided to withdraw.
Okay, I want to say it this way. Officially, she withdrew, but basically he got burned because he wanted her. She had made some statements about Benghazi on TV shows, and the senators said, we want to know more about it. They didn't get their information, so basically she withdrew. Kerry, he got his nomination, 94-3. Then comes Hagel. that is just going on, and nobody knows he's going to be confirmed, and ultimately he's confirmed basically because Chuck Schumer gave him a pass. Chuck Schumer met with him, gave him a blessing, and said, Hagel, you're good. You go. And Chuck Schumer is a very powerful senator. He gets through. Now, on Brennan, you actually have an amazing event, which is a filibuster, a 12 or 13-hour filibuster by Senator Rand Paul. I mean, this is really unprecedented on a nomination. Now, we've had filibusters by the Southern senators on civil rights. These were very famous. Strom Thurmond going on and on, reading the Bible and the newspaper to stop the American Senate from putting in effect civil rights laws. But to have a filibuster for 12 or 13 hours against the nominee is really unprecedented. And he ended the filibuster, if you recall, where he got a letter from Attorney General Holder that said that the government would not use drones to take out American citizens. Once he got the letter, he gave up the filibuster. So the whole nomination process for President Obama, I think, has been painful and difficult for him. I think, to my mind, if the president wants a nominee, he should have his nominee if they're qualified. The purpose of the senatorial advice and consent is to vet the candidate to make sure they're qualified. That's the sole issue. It shouldn't be a political game. The president's entitled to have who he wants on his cabinet and as his advisors.
What does this do for Rand Paul's image?
Well, I mean, in terms of as conservatives, I'm sure they would be very thrilled to see Rand Paul out there, tugging at the strings of the Senate leadership and doing this filibuster. Generally speaking, I think it diminishes to some extent the prestige of the Senate. Which isn't supposed to be fooling around with filibusters on nominees the way that was going on. I mean, Rand Paul is a maverick. He's Rand Paul. He's Rand Paul's kid. I mean, these are maverick politicians, and he wants to make a point. And that's the way he made his point. Making the point that way really wasted 12 or 13 hours of the government's time.
Does he hurt himself in the long run?
I don't think so. I don't think so. His whole thing is, I've got my own drummer, I've got my own wavelength, and that's how I'm going to play. And he's going to keep playing that way. So I think he'll be popular and remain to be popular.
Bring us the latest President Obama's position on same-sex marriage.
Well, we have a very exciting March 26th and March 27th, the Supreme Court is going to take up to 2 same-sex marriage cases. This is big beyond belief. One case deals with DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, which basically says that federal benefits are not available to a married couple that is not a man and a woman, meaning that if it's a gay couple, lesbian couple, they're not entitled to federal benefits. And the case involved a lesbian couple that wanted some federal benefits in estate tax. They couldn't get it. That's case number 1. Case number 2, California has Proposition 8. California legalized same-sex marriage, but then took it away and banned it under a proposition that was submitted to the voters in California. The federal court said unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court could make same-sex marriage legal in all states, or it could just limit that ruling to California. Why? Because the problem is California gave gays and lesbians the right to marry and then took it away. Mm-hmm. So they could limit their decision just to that state and say, California, no good. Same-sex marriage legal in California. Proposition 8, no good. Or they could say, in general, as President Obama has advocated on DOMA and on the state case involving California, that same-sex marriage bans are unconstitutional and illegal and improper. So the question is, how far are they going to go? But probably they're not deaf at the Supreme Court, and they see what the president is saying, and they're also looking at the trend of the time. On the other hand, 9 states have permitted same-sex marriage, I think in D.C., and probably 40 states around that number have banned it. So the law is all over the place. That's where the Supreme Court has to come in and hopefully give some stability and some clarity to where we are in this issue. And it's going to be pretty fascinating to hear the arguments on the 26th and the 27th, and then to hear the result.
And that's the point I'm getting to. Results, how long do you think before we'll hear a result, given the fact that it's going to be argued for a minute?
Well, it's going to be in March, and then at the end of the term, May or June. I mean, whenever the term ends, that's when they're going to do it. And they're not going to release this decision until the very end of their deliberations, I don't think. Mm-hmm. So it would be a month or 2 or something like that when the court will release this decision. It will be life-changing and America-changing, this decision. region, or it could just be limited to California. So it's very, very interesting to see how this works. The problem is that there's a real disconnect between the federal law and the state law. The state laws are all over the place, and the federal law is basically banning benefits for gays under federal laws, and federal laws are extensive. They calculated the amount of these benefits. It's hundreds of millions of dollars we're talking about. And in the case at hand, it's a few $100,000. It's very, very significant. And it also goes to what the Obama administration has said in a letter from the Attorney General to basic human rights issues, that gays should be treated like everyone else. And as we know, President Obama said very, I think, beautifully in his inaugural, I believe in equal rights. This is my vision for my second term. I'm talking about Stonewall and Seneca Falls, women's rights, gay rights. This is my vision. This is what my legacy is going to be. So I think that something important is going to happen in March in the Supreme Court, but whether it will be as extensive as what the president is advocating, that
still remains to be
seen.
determined.
Yeah.
All right, well, Mark, you stay with us, and coming up after the break, we are going to go to another front. We're going to talk about one local Bronx business that is actually trying to make a difference in the area of cancer. And then we'll bring Mark back a little bit later on in the show to talk about international news. So stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
G-Morning, sunshine. Wakey, wakey. Text me. Are your parents home later? We can hang. LUV, love you. JK. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you with your friends? That's lame. We're in a huge fight right now. XO. What'd you dream about? Something I did. Are you on your way to the mall? I'm lonely. Nude pics. Send me some. Text me.
There is also a very attractive extended warranty option that includes free service and parts for the next 5 years. But there's no need for you to get that. You failed to get the test you needed at the doctor that would have detected disease early enough where it could have been treated. So you won't be around in 2 years to see him grow up, which means the warranty would be useless. Okay, sign here, please.
For a list of tests every man should have, go to ahrq.gov.
So here are the keys. Congratulations, it's officially yours. I'm sure you'll have many happy years here. Except for you, because you'll be gone 3 years from now, struck down by the same disease that got your father. So you won't be around for them. And sadly, it could have been detected early with a simple test, but you didn't have it. Okay, who wants to check out the backyard?
For a list of tests every man should have, go to ahrq.gov.
Mom, I'm not gonna go to college.
What are you saying? You've got to go to college.
Well, they offered me a job and...
Son, college is much more important.
No.
Yes.
No, Mom.
Yes.
Anyways, it's my decision.
Okay, well then decide what degree you're going to get, because you will go to college.
Their tomorrow depends on your words today. The Hispanic Scholarship Fund has the information you need to help your kids go to college.
Did you find that flashlight and the batteries?
Yes.
Did you make sure we're not missing anything in the first aid kit?
Yep.
Did you go through the plan with the kids again?
Yes. The more you prepare today, the more you'll be able to reduce the devastating effects of a tornado, an earthquake, a power outage, or any other disaster.
Early detection of breast cancer can save lives. The One Bronx business owner is offering free mammograms to do just that. Here to share more about how you can get a free mammogram is Paul DeSilvio, and he's the owner of La Casa Grande, and we see him over here at Arthur Avenue, and it's good to have you here once again on the show.
Nice to see you, brother.
Good. Talk to us a little bit about this here. You guys are really trying to take the step up and really making sure that people have the opportunity to have free mammograms and they can get checked out.
What happened was in about October, I was talking to one of the cast members of Mama's Boys of the Bronx, and was saying, what could we do? I've always had the urge to do something to do with charity and charitable events. We reached out to a few different charities. This one, the American Italian Foundation, they came up with something that's tangible. So if you're raising money, you actually can go and see what this is. And what this is a mobile mammogram for the community, for the underserved. If you don't have insurance, you can't afford it, they're going to check you out, and they're going to give you that mammogram for free, which is very expensive if you don't have insurance. And that was the whole reason for Cancer's Reality, the red carpet you attended. Bronx Net showed a lot of support for us. We had a lot of celebrities come down, but this was co-sponsored by me and a good friend of mine, Chippy Anthony, my friend from Mama's Boys of the Bronx. He owns Crunch Time Fitness on City Island. And this is all based around health and keeping yourself healthy. Right now, he's off doing his, he's about to come out with his own True Life show on MTV. He's busy doing his thing, so today I'm repping us both out, plus G-Fella, Italian hip-hop artist who actually helped us in this effort as well. They're calling us the Bronx Boys, hashtag.
Right.
You know, so
as a matter of fact, to be honest with you, there was you were seen on Mob Wives, and you got a big play for that with the work that you guys were doing with Hurricane Sandy.
Well, that day, we didn't know we were going to be on Mob Wives. We were filming my show, Light 'em Up Friday, Light 'em Up Friday cigar show that's shown on YouTube, which is a web show that's kind of blowing up and it's becoming its own thing. We decided to go out there in the middle of a nor'easter. They were evacuating Staten Island. We were going in. We got a 30-foot box truck, and we just filled it up with batteries, everything they asked us to bring, not just old clothes and anything like that. Everything that they needed, waters, batteries, plastic, garbage bags, things that they needed. It was filled to the tilt. So we went out to the Drunken Monkey out in Staten Island, Big Angie's place, and the cameras came out. They said, "Did you want to be on Mob Wives?" We said, "Fine." So when you saw the episode, she said, "The Bronx Boys are coming." The Bronx, Angie's voice, "The Bronx Boys are coming." Thank you, Paulie. So, and you saw me, Chip, G-Fella, go out there, Paulie P. And we unloaded the stuff. It came out on Mob Wives, and she says, "Bronx Boys," and it just started trending like crazy. So everybody's asking for that Bronx Boys spin-off, which, whether it happens, it happens. We're going to constantly do charity work.
Talk to us about this charity work because, you're a business owner. And there are a lot of people who just solely concentrate on business. But you've made it you have a vested interest in not just doing business, but also giving back to the community and giving back to charity. Why?
Well, if you Google Paul DeSilvio, you'll see I had, a little bit of a rough few years, and, you reevaluate your life, and you just decide, it's time to make a difference. Have a son that's 2-3 years old, and I want him to know me as somebody who made a difference in this world. And all of us, it's Chip, G-Fellow, we all have that in our blood right now to just give back. I don't know what's going on. It's just building. It's kind of one of those things, pay it forward. It's kind of building itself into its own thing. And it's growing, and people are jumping on board with us. There's a gentleman whose house burnt down out in Ossining, and we got everybody together. We, Facebook, Twitter, all of that stuff. And we got this guy back an apartment, a whole dining room set, bedroom set, clothing, because he lost everything. He didn't even have clothes on his back, toys for his kid. So it's kind of like with the Italian A-Team. You know what I mean? G-Fella's like kind of the Hannibal. Chip is the B.A. Baracus. I'm Murdoch, because I'm nuts. But we all kind of, people come to us with a problem, and if we could solve it, we'll help you. If we could get the community and people to back us, which is social media.
Right. But you have a unique way of really bringing people together because, being a part of your event that you did with the Mob Wives at the last cancer event, the amount of people who continue to show up and support, it seems like that you have this extended network that all you have to do is just place the call and they're there.
Yeah, I made good friends with a lot of good people. The Mob Wives save lives. A lot of people, I say that, but they do. I mean, they really busted their ass to save Staten Island. They helped out a lot. The Bronx Boys, we really love our whole community. It's not just, an Italian thing or an Arthur Avenue thing. It's just the whole Bronx thing, and it's Bronx pride. It's also, loving your neighbors. Staten Island's our neighbors, New Jersey's our neighbors. We're going to help anybody who comes to us and says, and if it's in our range to help you, we're going to try. From bullying to cancer to not, trying to raise funds for, if you're broke and you really need help, you just come to us and we're going to try to figure out a way, just don't come to me to borrow $10 for a tuna fish sandwich. I mean, I'll give it to you, but, this is serious stuff here we're talking about.
You want to do the real serious stuff. And speaking of serious stuff, we want to say March the 17th at what time now?
It's from 9 to 4 o'clock at 2344 Arthur Avenue in front of the world-famous Arthur Avenue Retail Market, where inside that market you got Mike's Deli, La Casa Grande, which is us, the pastry shop, Arthur Avenue Pasticceria. Now we got the Bronx Beer Hall, so it's going to be St. Patrick's Day. So come out and support, hang out, have a good time, come have a couple of brewskis. And if you need that mammogram, just call 877-628-9090 to make that appointment, because you have to make an appointment. And we're going to have that available to you. And there's going to be some surprise guests that show up to make things fun and interesting. We're going to be filming Light 'em on Fridays that day. We're going to be filming some other stuff, reality stuff. So it's going to be cool.
So come on out to the Arthur Avenue Market, and that's going to be taking place on Sunday from 9 to 4:30. You're welcome to be a part of that, a very special event where actually it will help with mammographies. And you guys continue to keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
All righty, Paul.
All right, I'll see you down there.
I'll see you down there. All right. Paul DeSilvia, owner of La Casa Grande, right there on Arthur Avenue. Now we got to take a quick break, but stay with us. Coming up after the break, we are going to have our work cut out for Mark Meyerowitz, our political analyst, as he'll be talking international news when we return.
Hands can do incredible things. Now they can even help save a life with hands-only CPR. If you see an adult suddenly collapse, just call 911, then push hard and fast in the center of the chest until help arrives. Learn more at handsonlycpr.org.
Hey, how's it going?
Sir, are you okay?
What? Oh, this? It's probably nothing. I'm sure it'll go away.
Go away? But, sir, that can't be good.
No, it's cool. Really.
Do you want a napkin or something?
Everything's fine. Thanks.
You wouldn't ignore this. So why ignore the signs of a stroke? At the first warning signs, call 911 immediately. Because time lost is brain lost.
I remember how much you said you liked mine. Oh.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of siblings in foster care who'll take you just as you are.
How are you? Hey, Mom.
You know, girls, I used to cheer back in my day. Ready? Okay!
That was amazing, amazing, amazing. Mom, that was amazing.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of siblings in foster care who'll take you just as you are.
This is so cool, Dad. This is so cool, Dad.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of siblings in foster care who'll take you just as you are.
Be free. Nice, Dad. Nice, Dad. Nice, Dad.
Charles!
Nice, Dad.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of siblings in foster care who'll take you just as you are.
And we're back here on Open. Darren Jaime here with you. We're joined by our political analyst, attorney, and SUNY Maritime Professor Mark Meyerowitz in a two-part discussion on the latest in the United States and international news. And, of course, what's circling headlines now, millions of Catholics awaiting the new selection of a pope. No new news out of the Vatican. Black smoke.
Right.
The question on the hearts and minds of many. Do you think it's going to be a while before we see white smoke?
Well, I don't think it'll be too long, but I want to get my shout out in for Cardinal Dolan.
Okay.
I think all Americans are rooting for him. He'd really be a breath of fresh air for the scandal-ridden church right now. It's got a lot of problems, and it was very sad to see His Holiness Pope Benedict have to step down.
Mm-hmm.
But not just because he stated he was tired and unable to handle it, but also because the scandals, this butler had leaked some information, and then there was apparently a report in a red book and all sorts of things swirling around. So it's important for the Holy See to find someone to stabilize the situation.
There's a couple of things of note here. First of all, they've never seen this in 600 years with the Pope, with a retired Pope and an active Pope. And then the second is the diversity, because there's a lot of questions as to who this next Pope will actually be, possibly going a little bit further into the diversity mass. What are we hearing?
Well, I mean, we hear a lot of things. We hear about a Latin American Pope. We hear about an African Pope. We hear about the fact that Europe might be descending in terms of importance in the papacy. But the controlling cardinals and the controlling administration and the Curia Regis is still essentially Italian and European. So I'm very doubtful that because of the problems that the church is having right now, that they're going to think outside the box. I think they're going to stay for this one inside the box and try to find someone who can stabilize and create an atmosphere of calm in the church, which has been plagued in addition by all sorts of scandals involving priests and abuse. Which also has meant, as my lawyer had talking, millions and millions of dollars in settlements. I just heard something today on the radio about another settlement being paid out because of abuse. So this has to be stabilized and calmed down. Also, the concern about how the modern world has alienated young Catholics from the Catholic Church. So they've got their hands full, so I think they're going to find someone who can do the job, but I don't know that they're going to go outside the box to someone like Cardinal Dolan, although he would be very refreshing. I think he had some press conferences to the reporters from the United States and around the world about what was going on, and then the officials at the Curia told them, stop, no more press conferences. They want to keep a lid on this, they want to keep it under control. So when the white smoke rises, there will be someone selected who can be also an administrator, but also a calming influence. I'm also a graduate of Fordham University. I got my PhD there, so I have a great respect for the Catholic Church and their administration, and so I wish them well in their inspiration and hope they find a good leader to lead this is, I think, the 266th Pope, if I understand from the newspaper. I don't know if that's the right number, but anyway.
Speaking of vacancies, let's talk about Venezuela, because Venezuela, with the loss of Hugo Chavez. First of all, when you ask about the legacy of Hugo Chavez, if you go to Venezuela, a country divided.
I mean, Chavez is either the greatest inspiration. I think Sean Penn went to his funeral, thinks he's the greatest thing in the world, and many of the people in Venezuela revere Chavez for his Chavismo, for this movement of the people, of the poor, against the elite, against the rich. But the problem is that what Chavez also did was to introduce instability into Latin America by his affiliation with Iran. Affiliations with Iran are likely to produce mischief, problems, and confusion. And we have the Monroe Doctrine, which, if you remember American history, we don't really look kindly upon intervention into Latin America, certainly by Iran, which has been known to and was probably the sponsor of a terrorist attack in Argentina some years ago in the Jewish Community Center. So that's a dangerous trend. His successor, this Mr. Maduro, there's going to be an election, is picking up this mantle. But basically this mantle of Chavismo is a very good thing for the poor, but it also alienated a good part of society. So he was a very divisive figure. The question is there somebody in Venezuela that can fill that void? Chavez was also kind of a cult of personality personality. When you have a personality like that, it's very hard to fill that vacancy, to fill that gap. When somebody like a Stalin, a Ramal, or Chavez dies, how do you find a replacement for that? Very, very difficult. So instability is likely to ensue in Venezuela, no question
How
about
do
it.
we foresee U.S.-Venezuela relationships? Because given the fact that there was, it was pretty separated for a while, do we see anything improving?
Well, I think it will improve. I mean, with Chavez out of the picture, I think it's inevitable it will improve. But the question is, how much will it improve? If Maduro is put in place and he simply follows this divisive policy of dividing the classes in a class warfare in Venezuela, then and continuing the alliance with Iran, then that's going to be very problematic. But if someone more moderate comes into the fore, then the chances for improvement could be there. And of course, I'm sure American foreign policy is working very hard on seeing what those changes will be. Can Maduro grab the mantle of Chavez? Hard to know. Chavez was Chavez. There's one and only such person. And the people were deeply disturbed by his death. The question is, can such a charismatic leader be replaced? Very hard. So I think inevitably better for U.S.-Venezuela relations. But how much better depends on who takes the mantle and what they do.
Talk about U.S. relations. One situation the U.S. is monitoring is that of Syria. Please bring us up to date with the latest.
Well, the situation in Syria continues to deteriorate. This is a civil war. The rebels are sometimes gaining ground and sometimes they're not, but the regime has not yet toppled. Iran is supporting the regime. Turkey is supporting the rebels. Saudi Arabia is supporting the rebels. And the problem that you have is that in the rebel elements, we find other types of elements, such as Al-Qaeda and other groups that the United States is, of course, opposed to. We don't want to have another repeat of Afghanistan, this kind of thing, Charlie Wilson's war, where we supported the rebels in Afghanistan and we armed them. We taught them the wherewithal to shoot down planes and shoot down Soviet planes. Then they took power, and then they now are fighting us, and they're now the Mujahideen, and they're now the jihadists. So we don't want to have jihadists and other anti-American elements be empowered inside Syria when when the Syrian regime falls, that these elements are going to take power. That will be very, very bad for the United States and for its foreign policy. So the United States has tried to articulate certain groups or to point the finger at groups like al-Nusra and others that we say these groups are poison, not good. We won't give them any arms. But it's very hard to arm the rebels and not arm all the aspects of the rebels if your intention is to undermine the regime. So America's in a tricky situation. Turkey is in a really tricky situation because they're a border country. And they've got the Patriot missiles now from NATO sitting on their border to protect them against Syria. So you've got a civil war raging. You've got fighting on the Turkey-Syria border, hundreds of thousands of refugees, literally a disastrous situation. And how it unravels, it doesn't unravel well. It unravels sort of like Humpty Dumpty unraveled. Humpty Dumpty will fall off the wall, break into pieces. There'll be, Alawites and Christians, and they're in one group, and there will be rebels, the Sunnis, there will be Al-Qaeda, and it will be a perpetual fight, and Iran will be heavily involved. So Syria is still in play. The problem also, I should mention, is on the Israeli-Syrian border. Serious problems. Recently, I think the rebels captured some UN peacekeepers and held them hostage. And the fear is that the UN, which has a contingent there to keep the peace, which they've kept for many, many years in the Golan and on the Israeli-Syrian border, there's a fear that if the UN peacekeepers are in danger, they're going to be pulled out, which is the potential for another war between Syria and Israel, which would be catastrophic. So no good news to report to you, Darren. However, we still have to hope that a glass of water will remain half full, and that American foreign policy will be able to somehow work its way, working with Turkey and other allies, to at least remediate the situation.
Got to take a quick break, but we'll continue our conversation with our political analyst, Mark Myritz. He'll be with us when we return right after this.
Be free.
Nice, Dad. Nice, Dad. Nice.
Charles!
Nice, Dad.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of siblings in foster care who'll take you just as you are.
It's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to fightarthritispain.org.
How you doing?
Hi. Hi.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
How you doing? I just want regular, no sugar today.
You got it.
Thanks. Hello. Hi. Did you eat that whole thing today?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's...
Hi, how you doing?
She's getting big, huh?
Big. Yeah, she is big. Great haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks cute. Come on, let's go. Nice to see you. Thanks a lot.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
Megan, you're a tramp. Ryan Fitch told me you guys made out. Everybody knows. He says you're the most desperate girl he knows, besides your mom. How many boyfriends does she have anyway? Lots? That zit is huge. Zit face.
And back here on Open, Darren Jaime here with you, and we're continuing our conversation with our political analyst, Mark Myritz. And on the international front, I want to bring up one name and get one response. Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, well, he's an international figure as well now, in international politics. He went to visit his very good friend, the leader of North Korea, of all places. I mean, look, politics is bizarre, but it doesn't get more bizarre than that. It's like Sean Penn going to the funeral of Chavez and Rodman going to see the little leader or the junior leader of North Korea. What happens is these stars become enamored by these charismatic leaders, and they have a crush on them. So North Korea is a country that routinely starves its population. Millions are starving. They take the money in their budget and they use it for development of weaponry to keep the war going. There's actually been there's only an armistice. There is no peace settlement between the United States and Korea as a result of the Korean War. That DMZ zone between South Korea and North Korea is one of the most dangerous places in the world still. And North Korea is developing nuclear weapons. And they're sharing their know-how with countries like Iran. So North Korea is a mess of a country. And why Dennis Rodman, who is a popular figure in the United States, why he has to find his way there when there are all sorts of other places in the world where people are literally starving. And if he's going to go to a place where people are starving, maybe to say something about it, because people would listen to that. Instead of that, he just shows his adulation for the leader of a country which oppresses its people, and the people are literally slaves.
But then you hear the comment from Rodman that President Obama, we need you to give a phone call to North Korea.
Nothing wrong with a phone call to North Korea, but what's the value of a phone call to North Korea? We've had a lot of phone calls with Iran. We've had a lot of phone calls and meetings with Iran, and they just keep developing nuclear weapons. And the North Koreans keep exploding tests of nuclear weapons, which is in violation of international law and international sanctions. So what good would the phone call be? I mean, it would be fine to call the guy on the phone, but it doesn't seem that North Korea has any interest in doing anything and acting like a, well, I'm going to say, excuse me, but a civilized nation in the community of nations. To just develop your nuclear weapons and let your people starve to death, I don't understand. If President Obama calls him, as Rodman suggests, what's he going to do? He's going to start feeding his people and not nuclearize? I don't see it. So it sounds like good public relations. And I also have to say, if I could, that sports figures and celebrities and entertainers should stay in the field in which they are experts at, and not cross over and become commentators on politics. Honestly, I really am taken aback by Sean Penn. Who is Sean Penn to go to Chavez's funeral? Chavez is a major opponent and antagonist of the United States and a friend of Iran, which is a sponsor of terrorism in the world. So people might mistake his endorsement or his presence there as something indicating a friendship with that regime. And there shouldn't be friendship with a regime that sponsors or is related to sponsors of terrorism. An interesting aside about the Chavez funeral is that Ahmadinejad, the leader of Iran, the president of Iran, apparently, I think, hugged the mother of Chavez at the funeral, and the Iranian imam said that was very bad. He shouldn't have done that. He was widely criticized for that. So as you can see, we're dealing with different worldviews, different cultures, different mindsets, and the Iranian mindset, honestly, is supporting Hezbollah, is supporting terrorism. So our celebrities shouldn't be associated with people in that group. I don't think so.
Back on this home front, I want to talk a little bit about today, and today's a very special day in regards to Gideon versus Wainwright. Many people may not be familiar.
Right.
It's a landmark decision.
It's a landmark decision. This fellow Clarence Gideon actually took a piece of paper in prison and wrote a petition to the Supreme Court to hear his case because he claimed he had been denied the right to counsel. He actually was accused of committing a crime in a pool hall, stealing something in a pool hall, and he was wrongly accused. He wanted the right to counsel. He was denied the right to a lawyer. He scribbled his petition, sent to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court took his case and decided that in these criminal cases, you have a right to counsel. And that set a tremendous precedent. America's standout. I mean, if we have a defendant, the defendant wants counsel, that's the first thing that's asked, right? Invoke your right to counsel. That's one of my favorite parts of Law and Order. Invoking the right to counsel. Well, that's Clarence Gideon, this person whose name, a person who was an anonymous prisoner, who wrote a scribble note and sends it to the Supreme Court. Where else in the world can that happen? Another big anniversary, I think, is the March 7th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March. So we've had a lot of exciting things. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say about Gideon, which I forgot. Vice President Mondale was the person involved in helping that case make it to the Supreme Court, which is very, very interesting. So we don't always know these great tidbits of history, but we take it for granted that a criminal defendant has the right to counsel. But wasn't taken for granted until a fairly unknown man scribbled a piece of paper and went to the top court in America, and that court said, "You're right, you deserve the right to counsel." And that's the kind of the flexibility and malleability of the American system to be able to take a piece of paper from a prisoner and change the law and make America better and give human rights to people. So I think it's really amazing and very commendable.
And we talked about some of the Montgomery pretty landmark decision.
Exactly.
Not a landmark decision,
event.
It's a landmark event that will go down in history.
Absolutely.
As one of the greatest events of civil rights history.
Absolutely. I mean, now we have the Supreme Court is looking at the Voting Rights Act. So we've got a big civil rights case there, which deals with districts and states that had traditionally denied voting rights to African Americans. And you can't change your voting procedures in those states unless you go to the federal Justice Department. big fight between the federal government and the states. That's a big civil rights, voting rights issue that's in the Supreme Court. So we've made tremendous progress in America in civil rights and voting rights. So it's good to be able to focus on an anniversary like Selma and Montgomery and remember what the atmosphere was like at that time when that march was necessitated because of the cruelty and the prejudice of the politicians and the governments in the South and what they were doing. And it's particularly good for young people and students to remember that because they're not old enough to remember it. And they should remember how America has changed for the better. And we have an African-American president. So we've come a long way, and we should be very proud of it. And I'm certainly proud of being an American because look at the things we've achieved. And look where we were.
Things to watch our eyes out on the political front before we wrap up.
Well, I think this whole issue with the sequester and with President Obama and this bipartisanship is a very, very interesting thing. President Obama, I think, had lunch with the Senate Democrats. I think he's coming today to have lunch with the House Republicans. That's a good thing. Discussion and talking and negotiating is a great thing. I think we've seen a lack of that. And I think it's a great thing that the president is coming to do that. And there's a lot of things to solve. And they can solve it together. We know it's been done in the past with Tip O'Neill and Reagan, and I think Obama is going to do the same thing. He's going to try to solve these problems. Spending cuts versus taxes. Okay, they're on different sides of the coin, but they can solve the problem if they talk and negotiate. If they're not going to talk and negotiate, they're never going to get anywhere. So to me, I think the hallmark point is bipartisanship and working together. And that's what the American people really demand.
We saw some bipartisanship in regards to immigration. Anything else we're going to see very clear bipartisanship?
Well, I think, as I said, again, on the points that the president stated, looking at his inaugural vision, I think that he has a particular platform that he wants to pursue. And it's very, very, let's say, liberal, let's put it that way. So I think that to get some of the things that he wants, he's going to need to cross the aisle and make some compromises with the other side and try to make his legacy what it is on immigration, on equal rights, on civil rights, on gay rights, all these things that he wants. And also on the international scene, the president is supposed to go to Israel for a trip. So he also is going to want to be an international peacemaker as well. So the second term, which is really not 4 years, it's technically 4 years, but it really is, he's got to do a lot before the next congressional election to make his mark, to make his legacy. And I think he can do it. He's had some great successes in the first term, and in the second term, if he can take his vision, take his program, and make it happen with bipartisanship, I think America and all Americans will be the better for it.
All right. Well, our political analyst, Mark Myers, thank you. We exhausted you today. Thank you very much for your...
It was a total pleasure.
Total pleasure. All righty. Well, definitely total pleasure here as well. And speaking of pleasure, guess what? Show's about over, and it definitely has been a pleasure coming into your homes. Of course, we want to thank our guests for joining us, and especially you, the viewer, for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of the show, have no fear. Guess what? Recablecast will be here, 10 p.m. Cablevision, Channel 67. Or if you're on Verizon Files, you can catch us on Channel 33, or you can go to the World Wide Web at any time, catching us at www.bronxnet.org. And for all of us here on the set of Open, we encourage you to have a great week, I should say, and don't forget to keep your heart, your mind, and most of all, this channel wide open. Darren Jaime saying take care, and God bless you all. Thank you, sir.
How you doing? I just want a regular, no. How you doing? I just want a regular, no sugar today.
You got it.
Thanks. Hello.
Hi.
Did you eat that whole thing today?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, how you doing?
She's getting big, huh?
Big. Yeah, she is big. Great haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks cute. Come on, let's go. Nice to see you. Thanks a lot.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize.